Okay, hi, my name is Tom Antos, and this is my first instructional video, so bear with me. I don't have the best kind of microphone for doing this, but hopefully you'll get something out of this video. Anyways, what I'm going to show you today is how you can achieve nice looking images for whether, if you're shooting with film or HD cameras or whatever, video cameras. And the reason is because I have a lot of people asking me, people looking at my work and they kind of go, ask me, how do you get these nice looking images? Like, what kind of equipment did you use? And really what I always tell them is it's not up to the equipment. It's not because of some expensive camera. And of course, most cases people don't believe me. Basically what it comes down to is designing the shot. If you can get your hands on some really nice camera, but you don't know how to use it, it won't make that much of a difference. What happens a lot of the times too is people will look at some project that inspires them, something that they just look at it and go, wow, this looks really nice, and they find out what camera it was shot on, and they basically try to get their hands on that camera, and they think their project is going to look like that, and of course it doesn't. Why? Well, because it's not just the camera, but it comes down to production design, comes down to locations, comes down to like things like costumes, comes down to good photography skills, good cinematographer, all these things that make the overall difference in creating a nice image. Here's an example you'll see with Beverly, a really talented actress, as you'll see maybe not from this video, but from a music video that I did recently with Christopher Charles. She's also a talented songwriter. Just throwing it out there, and thank you, Beverly, by the way. Basically, I'm doing like a little. It's not a scene for any kind of project. I'm kind of doing this just to illustrate my point. And this example is actually shot on the Red camera with Nikon lenses. But if you look at this shot right now, it's kind of flat looking, right? It's kind of boring. And the reason is because I did what most people would do. Let's say we're shooting a scene where somebody is talking on a cell phone to their friend or something, maybe pacing back and forth in front of their house. They're nervous, waiting for some important news. Well, what a lot of people do is they don't even think about what house we're gonna shoot at or whatever. They just kind of go whatever the location they have available, and they just kind of shoot it there. And they spend all their money on the camera, some expensive piece of camera. Then it turns out that the shot doesn't look nice. Well, I mean, if you point the camera at, like, for example, this plain-looking door, then obviously, it's not going to look interesting. When you watch over here, when the camera pans over to the right, you can actually see the, this interesting-looking kind of red garage door. Now, that's the kind of first thing I would say is if you can afford it, then you should spend the money on a good production designer, somebody who's going to find the right location for you, somebody who's going to dress up the location for you. Also, you should invest money in maybe nice looking props, and renting a nice location, things like that. If you don't have the money, then see what you have available and work with it. But I mean, kind of like what I did in this case. I just had this location and I saw, okay, that red door looks more interesting than that front door. So basically I moved the whole action over here. Now, if you look at this angle, right away it looks more interesting. There's more color to it. You can see those flowers in the foreground. But what's bad looking is on the ground. You can see this kind of patches of grass, and just basically it's not interesting. You don't need to see the ground to get the idea of what's happening in the shot. We just want to see, this girl on the telephone talking to somebody, right? So first thing I would do is, I basically change the angle. I kind of put the camera a bit lower, and I go from instead of those of you who are using video cameras, you'd zoom in. If you're using film lenses, I basically changed the lens from 50 millimeter, I believe it was, to 105 millimeters. I basically zoomed in a bit more, and right away it looks more interesting if you look at it. Basically, we're showing only things that are pleasing to the eye. So like that red door, a little bit of the flower pot in the foreground, and then some of the greenery and the flowers in the background. And and the stuff that doesn't look interesting, we don't show basically. And so that's the kind of the first step. Second thing I would say doing is what a lot of times what happens is even when people who do shoot with nice film cameras or a nice HD digital film cameras, they basically when they're shooting outside you have a lot of light, and when you have a lot of light, the problem is you need to get rid of the light, otherwise the image is overexposed, obviously. So what first thing that people do is they close down the iris. Problem with that is your basically your depth of field becomes kind of infinite almost, especially if you close the iris really high, like I have in this case, and that makes everything look kind of sharp. Everything's sharp and focused in this shot. So first thing I would begin by doing is opening the iris all the way up, and in order to darken the image, I put some ND filters. But if you don't have any ND filters, I don't know, darken the scene some other way. Maybe increase the shutter speed, darken the scene another way, but leave the iris all the way open. That way the depth of field is very narrow, and now as you can see, only Beverly is nicely in focus, and the flower pot in the foreground and in the background is out of focus. Right away, just makes it look more interesting, makes the shot look more kind of, adds some dimension to it. That makes it look basically more 3D. Um, Next thing you can do is I basically, decided that the red shirt that she was wearing, it kind of blends in too much with the door, and I told her, okay, let's change the shirt. What the actors are wearing, and also the makeup up here. Beverly put on some makeup, and it just right away it looks a bit better. And those little things, they all add up. They all make a little tiny difference. But if you do all of them in overall, it's just gonna make a much more interesting looking shot. So that's the next step. Still, when you look at it, it's a decent looking shot. Now, the next step after this is what happens, when you bring your footage back to your editing suite. If you shot on film, you have to develop it, do the transfers. If you shot on digital, just put it in your computer and you have to, basically adjust it. And a lot of people fail miserably at that stage, and it's very, very important that you pay attention to it. And it's not as easy as, some people think, oh, just, I don't know, increasing the saturation or something, making the colors more bright. Color correction is there's some people basically who are really good at it, and I would say if you know those kind of people, hire them. It's worth the money. Some really good colorists, they'll basically add life to your image. And then there's some people who are horrible at it. I think I'm decent. I can do an okay job. I'm definitely not as good as some colorists out there. But if you spend the time and you learn proper color correction, and you don't need some crazy plugins, or people think you just throw some preset on it. It's not like that. It with every shot it's going to be different, and you use basic color curves that you can get in Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro, or whatever it is that you're using. Use basic color curves, and you can do great color correction. Like in this case, I'm going to crush the blacks, probably pop the reds a little bit, maybe make that green in the back kind of stand out a bit more, but make sure that her skin tone doesn't look jarring and kind of freaky, and just kind of still leave the skin tone looking neutral. And that right away you can see makes the shot look a lot more interesting. And that's kind of like, I would say, the last kind of stage. And now when you look at this, I mean, this is a shot that I would say looks like like it belongs in a movie, or a nice music video or something. And as you can see, I don't really spend a lot of money on it. And if you compare this to the beginning, you can see the big difference. The clothing, the location is just not good. The angle is horrible, and there's no color correction, right? So you can see the big difference in the beginning and then the after shot. And again, the last thing I want to illustrate to all of you guys is that you can achieve great looking results even if you can afford to to get the red camera. Let's say you can only get a little DV camera or something. Well, here I basically shot this exact same scenario using the Canon XH-A1. It's basically a basic camera that people use out there for wedding videos and that kind of thing. But again, because that camera uses video lenses, the depth of field is not as narrow. I kind of moved the camera back, zoomed in a bit more, opened the iris all the way up. To kind of maximize or minimize in this case the depth of field, so to throw the background a little bit out of focus. Picked again a nice looking angle, and then added some color correction, and it looks right away. It looks like a nice presentable shot, especially if you compare the beginning, which was again shot on the same Canon XH-A1. It looks just as crappy as the shot, as the same shot that we shot on the red camera. And that's kind of, I guess, it. And next tutorial I'll try to show you guys maybe how you can make the interior shots look better, how using lighting and things like that. But for the exterior, I would say this pretty much covers it. All right. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. And good luck out there shooting. Bye.